Never seen a smile so big on my little old lady's face until I tell her I'm going fishing all weekend. Pack up all of my bait and I make plans for 7:45 and I swing around, pick up my date for the weekend. Some reason she seems to please when I'm leaving. There's something I'm missing when I'm gone fishing. When I'm gone fishing. When I'm gone fishing.
Yeah, baby.
Yes, sir. Sir, indeed. It is Labor Day weekend. And Steve Shaw, let me pass the sentiments along to everyone. Happy Labor Day Monday. Hope you've had a fantastic weekend. I know it's busy time. People are getting back to school. Maybe they're back to work after a couple of weeks off, maybe the summer off. Teachers are going back. Things are changing. We're in that mode of migration. Much like Jim mentioned just before we went to live, the salmon, a lot of people caught salmon on the weekend. If you're on Lake Ontario, holy smokes, did they ever put a hurting on the salmon? If you were watching social media at all, it was kind of hard not to see somebody holding up a salmon. So thanks to all those that did and did take pics, because as I say all the time, we live vicariously through you. I am really super excited about today's show. We gave it out right at the end. Well, I should say the hint was given when we went to broadcast. I know it has been a hotly talked about topic. There is lots of criticism, whether it be concrete, whether it be negative, positive, but forward-facing sonar is at the forefront of everybody's conversation when it comes to fishing. And it's not just bass fishing. I think every kind of fishing right now is sort of under that umbrella of forward-facing sonar. Do I get it? Do I need it? Do I have to have it? What kind of fish angler am I going to be without it? It is a hotly contested topic, and we have some great arguments. What we are going to do, we're going to talk about it, and it's just going to be Jim and Jay, and I shouldn't say just. Lawrence, unfortunately, is going to be able to join us tonight. So I'm going to bring Jim and Jay, and we're going to look at both of their perspectives, because obviously Jim, old hat, he represents a segment of time where all of this technology basically started to kind of where it is now. And now you've got Jay and Trevor and Owen that are experiencing some of this newer technology. And really, at the end of the day, these young anglers, they're further ahead when it comes to understanding graphs and depth finders and sonars and forward-facing sonars as well than maybe some of us old hats. I remember Mark Elbeck getting in the boat on one of our retreats, and I can say without being ashamed at all, he said, "Do you mind if I take a look?" I said, "By all means, go ahead." I had it on the wrong pixel. The frequency, I should have been on a different frequency. Anyway, after he fooled around with it, boom, it worked even better than before. So, as I said, it is a big topic. We're going to be going about it in my kind of way, which is looking at everything around the main focus, which is, do we ban it? Do we not ban it? I don't want to talk about that. At the end of the day, those who make far much more money than I do and have to make those difficult decisions will make those difficult decisions. And you know what? We look forward to hearing what those decisions are going forward, because at the end of the day, is it going to be an electronics warfare? Is that the arms race? Is it's going to be all about electronics, or are we going to kick it old school and limit what we're allowed on the boat? Anyway, just it's a great topic. I can't wait to talk about it. So let's get to the announcements and do so very quickly so that we can get right at it. Manny, how you doing, buddy? Rob, always a pleasure to see you. Richard, thanks for all you do as well, my friend. Luke's in the house. Nice to see you, Luke. Jeremy's been busy. I saw the campfire you had last night. A1, brother. Love those skids. Can't get enough of those pallets. Eve's in the house. How you doing? Andrew, I seen you, buddy. It's been a while. Hockey season is very close and approaching. I'm sure you're getting the blades ready and getting ready to bulge the twine. Alicia, always a pleasure to see you. Just a quick to try the little hack using we will talk about Manny. We'll get to that another day. But you know what? I did see that message come up on the phone, so I promise you we will talk about that upcoming. But in the meantime, as I said, lots to talk about, lots going on. If you don't know, you will in a sec. We always have to have our Steve Shaw update. Just so you're aware, Steve is somewhat comfortable. He is still awaiting his surgery, but things are definitely better. And I just want to take a moment. I'm really sorry I didn't download a picture, but they did move Serena's garden, and it's in the backyard, and they've done some incredible work. So if you want to see it, it is a true dedication and keepsake that they have erected in the backyard at the Shaw family household to honor Serena, and it looks awesome. So kudos to you guys, and of course Steve, who continues to pump out edits even though he is still on the mend. But we're thinking of you, buddy. We always will, and that'll never stop. And again, thanks for all you do, my friend. The CFN Fish Off. All of 2 prizes have been sent out. So a big shout out. I can't thank Pal Cassie's enough. Brad setting it all up and getting those out to you. I've seen some of the returns. I've seen some of the videos. I will get to those as well, because I'll tell you what, it really means the world when you folks give a shout out to the sponsors. It means the world to me. It makes my job a lot easier. So I really appreciate those who take the time and say thank you, put it on display, whether it be on the table, on the floor. It means the world. But again, big shout out to Shimano, who they really stepped up to the plate this year with the amount of product that they provided that is now hopefully in the hands of all you CFN Fish Off winners. As you know, the CFN Fall Fish On is currently on, and it's running tandem with the Multi-Species Madness that Mike will be talking about tomorrow, Fraternity Tuesday. And I also want to make a notable mention, again, huge shout out to Ugly Boys Baits and North Shore Tackle for stepping up as well. Every single prize that we sent out, and there's still lots left, Bruce, I'll tell you, the Ugly Boys Baits family has really stepped up in a huge way and provided a spinner bait, a drop shot weight, something that went in addition to the reel, addition to whatever the prize pack was. So again, big shout out to the Downs family, and of course, Ugly Boys Baits. Can't thank you folks enough. We are getting very, very close to the Camp Macintosh OFC Nation 2nd annual retreat. And I'll tell you what, it's better you look at it and see it than for me to talk about it. Where are you going, Don?
Camp Macintosh.
Yeah, baby. Said to me, there are limited spots, and when I say limited, I think there's maybe 4 or 5. Please don't hesitate. I've got my oldest son coming, so that's going to take up 1 spot. I'm going to have to call Tracy, and you're going to have to call Tracy. If you haven't booked yet, do so before I do, so I get to tell my son he doesn't have to. No, I'm kidding. It'd be awesome to see you. And just south of $400 gets you 3 days, 2 nights, all your food, including a boat. So it's quite a package. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have a lot of fun, and we're going to be catching a ton of smallmouth. The walleye are starting to come in. I've seen some big girl shots. We're going to be posting and promoting that on Wednesday. We did a Monster Monday post this Monday in regards to the upcoming retreat. So if you need any of the details, please go to the post that you'll see just below this feed. And outside of that, thanks, Steve, for all of the links. Again, there is the link if you want to get a hold of Tracy or Andre right now. Jump off the call, and by all means, go ahead and do so. What's up, Ed? Nice to see you, my friend. As I said, it is an honor to have you folks here on a Monday. Again, we are going to be talking about forward-facing sonar. We are going to be doing that right after this last announcement, which is, I'm leaving for Timmins either Tuesday or Wednesday, not 100% sure which day just yet. If it's Tuesday, I'm in trouble because I'm not packed. So I'm hoping it's Wednesday. This is the final stop of the NOWT. It is an honor of mine to be asked to come up and host it, to MC it, to promote it, because truly, I mean, everything that's done down here with CSFL, we see it all, up front and center with Andy and the Pilata work that goes on, the entire Pilata family. And of course, all of their volunteers and those who help out. CFL is very successful, and it is in the forefront down here. But the one thing that is not is the NOWT, which is the Northern Ontario Walleye Trail. They've asked me to come up and MC it. This is going to be on Friday and Saturday. Pre-fishing, of course, is Thursday. Lots of events. The reason this is so special is this is the last time it's going to be held on the land that is owned and operated by the Matagami First Nations. And they have invited me up. And as I said, this is going to be quite an honor. I'm really looking forward to it. Can't wait to get up there and see all the walleye. And of course, introduce you to all of the teams. So have a look. It is really awesome. It is, it's their classic is what it is. They have 6 other tournaments that run throughout the year in various cities. It is all over Northern Ontario. It is a hard tournament to participate in. It's a hard tournament to follow if you are not a part of it, because they're in a different place all the time. But needless to say, as I said, this all has now come to an accumulation of 27 teams that are vowing for that crown, that trophy, to say that they are the hottest stick in the north. So looking forward to that. Again, hopefully we'll see some of you Timmins folks up there, because as I know, it's a big event. Most of the town comes out. There's a lot of people there, and I'm going to bring it all to you. So I'm looking forward to that. That's all I've got, unless there's something else that somebody else wanted to mention. Again, thanks for all of you joining. We are going to be talking to Big Jim and Jason Barnews about the controversial forward-facing sonar. We're going to look at it a little bit differently than banning it or allowing it. So stay tuned. It's going to be fun. I think it's going to produce a lot of great discussion, and I'm open to hear lots of it from you folks. Right after this, a word from our sponsor. There they are. The myths, the legends, the one and only Big Jim McLaughlin, and of course our good buddy Jason Barnews. How we doing, fellas?
I'm great.
I'm wind beaten today. This weekend of fishing, I went out 2 days running, but it is windy. Oh boy, it's been a busy pedaling that kayak around for 2 days. Wild.
I can imagine, Jay. I can imagine, and of course, something that we didn't talk about at the beginning was it. Welcome to summer. Like it's hotter than the Hobbs of Haiti out there.
Yeah, we haven't had 30-degree heat since it's been well over a month since we've had like legitimate 30-degree heat. I know I was up in the Saugeen last time that happened, and that was probably even the end of last week of July when we hit 30 degrees. So it's crazy out there, and relentless winds, southwest winds for 3 days down here, and it's 20 gusting to 30. It's like steady. It's a wind tunnel. It hasn't let up for 3 days. It's actually a pretty crazy front. Look at that guy.
I'm beat.
Yeah.
You're a pussy.
Is he sleepwalking right now, Jay? Is he sleepwalking?
Oh, dude. Well, short story. Somebody didn't get up this morning at 6. He slept in 2 hours.
I took 2 naps yesterday. One I woke up at 8. The other one I woke up at 8 the other day. But it's this morning.
So we finally went out, and the wind was howling, and the wind where we went on Long Point Bay, if the wind stays kind of south, it's okay. And if it goes west, it's bad right now. And it kind of stayed southwest. And coming in, man, I was stuffing waves in the kayak coming in today. We spearing waves in the kayak.
Wow.
So not smart. Not one of those brain dead days. But the frog bite was on today, boys. The frog was king today. If you could find a pocket where you could get out of the wind, they were chewing. But that was the problem, trying to find a spot where you can make a cast.
Frog bites on. I gotta go.
Well, Jay, our Jim, I was just about to say you could speak to that. I've seen a couple of your posts with frogs in the mouths of some bucket mouths.
Yeah, I got a few this week. They're messing around with toads on frog, toad hooks instead of fishing an actual frog. And I think the verdict's in for me. I'm going to go back to a single hook on it.
Oh, interesting.
I don't know.
Interesting. Gentlemen, this is a hotly contested topic that I know both of you have listened to, participated in, been intrigued by. It's something that, in a lot of cases isn't going away, but I think people are looking too closely at it from a perspective that do we allow it or do we ban it? Let's look at some of the arguments. Let's look at what is happening, and maybe we can come up with a good solution. I'm going to play Kyle Welcher's take on it. Jim, obviously, I'm going to have you dive in first because I think some of what he speaks to you. But he also speaks to you, Jay, because at the end of the day, you're like me. You're kind of in the middle. You have a young and up-and-coming angler who is learning far faster than either one of us combined some of the new technologies that are coming out here. Now, you know a lot about it because you use it on a regular basis at work. But for some of us who are weekend warriors that really don't get to dive into it like yourself and Trevor, we're old hats, and we're like sheep. We're not sure which way to go. But let's start with Kyle's take, and then we'll hear from Big Jim.
Stale as far as entertainment goes and the forward-facing sonar tournaments. It's a little bit stale, and I think it's on us as an organization to figure out how to ramp up the entertainment level. It's always been where people are looking at the graph on 2D, on whatever, and they're dropping straight down, pitching behind the boat a little bit, pitching out in front of the boat a little bit, but just you're so focused in on your electronics, and it's been like that forever. It's been straight focused in on your electronics. Whenever you do that, I feel like it's been like that forever. I've always felt like the smallmouth tournaments were a little bit less entertaining, and I think we need to change kind of the way that we do it. That's my personal opinion. But other than that, it's been completely dominated by forward-facing sonar as far as the rookies go, and that's how it's going to be. Every rookie that comes in from the opens from now on is going to be super, super good with it. So it's on us to make sure they're not better than us with it. And I used it a lot. I didn't commit to it in some tournaments. In some tournaments I did. So, I mean, it's up to us to make sure them rookies don't come in and do us like that no more. Because we gotta get some of the wins next year.
I have to agree, and I love his angle, Jim, in the sense that he's like, okay, well, hold on a second. Like, all right, maybe our youth has come in here, our rookies are showing us up a little bit. Maybe it's on us to up our game. Maybe it's on us to learn this forward-facing sonar, because if this is the trend that we're going, it sounds like I can't compete without it. So you either adapt or you die.
Well, one thing he says, he uses the word rookies. Well, the Johnsons aren't rookies.
True.
Kevin Van Dam is not a rookie.
Yep.
Watched him catch a lot of fish with it a few weeks ago, almost win the last tournament he's going to fish. So, but I know what he's saying. That's not fair. I'm just saying because he used that, And I think the other thing they got to, some of the things they got to realize when they use the word ban, they're not talking about this being illegal, that they're not going to let them use it in tournaments. That's different. You can't stop anybody who wants to use that. They can use it. That's, it's what it is. And I think too that we wouldn't even be hearing any of this if it wasn't for tournament fishing.
Yeah.
Do you know anybody, Jay, have you been on saying, oh my God, I'm standing here with my forward facing sonar catching all these fish. I shouldn't be doing it. There's, and such a small percentage of the fishing community has these.
Yeah.
There's millions of people fishing. Millions. They haven't they haven't sold millions of these, and they probably never will because of the price.
Yeah,
it's what it is. I just think it's getting a little blown up, and I think it's just a change. It's just an evolution. Another thing, and you've heard me say this a million times. Let's go right back to the beginning. What happened if we banned boats? Be a lot more fish around, wouldn't there? That kind of thing. It's what it is. Technology, like Ed just said, technology is going to move forward, and it doesn't make a difference if they ban it this year. It'll be back in 2 years, as stronger than ever. So it's just it's just one of those things.
Yeah.
I don't use it. I don't bother with it. If I want it on the boat, I can have it on the boat. They'll send it over. I can't be bothered with it at this point in life. Like, I'm probably a bad person to ask about this, because I could go fish behind my house tomorrow and catch all the fish I need with no electronics on the boat. You know what I'm saying? I could probably go out and get 40 largemouths tomorrow without electronics if I had to, just skimming around the lake looking and doing what I used to do.
But
Now,
Jim, would you consider tournaments now, especially smallmouth, more boring than before?
Yep.
Before forwards facing sonar? Okay.
yeah,
Jay,
I
did
used to love Kevin Van Dam slinging jerk baits. I used to love watching that. It's definitely changed. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. It's a whole different game now. But you know what else I really enjoy? I love watching the reaction of these guys when they're watching this, and all of a sudden they turn the boat, they reel in the bait in from way over to the right, and they pitch it off to the left. That's no different than going down the shoreline, and I'm fishing a piece of looking weed, and I haven't got a bite in it. And I look up ahead and I see a beautiful big patch of green milfoil with red on the top. Well, the jig's coming in and I'm throwing it over where I can see.
Yeah.
There's so many things, but it's
so before you're right, Jim, and before you weigh in, Jay, the one thing that I loved about Kyle's point, forward facing 3D, 2D, doesn't matter. I think all of us have been in tune to look at our electronics. So whether it's forward facing, you're always looking at your depth sound. You're always looking at the structure, especially if you think you're in a good place. You want to verify it with the electronics. Am I wrong to say that?
Oh yeah, no. When I used to fish with a flasher,
yep.
We're back to the old half-inch squares for a graph. I didn't pay attention to that. I had a Vexilr beside it, and I used to use the flasher. So you got to watch a flasher. You have to keep your eye on it. It's one of those things. You just have to watch it. So for me to watch sonar is nothing new. It's I think it's even worse now. I don't even think, I know it's even worse now when you see some of these guys out there doing that. Even Tammy sitting with me here one day last week, she was working on Just Fishing, and I spun my laptop around and I said to her, look at these guys. And she said, they're all going to have bad necks in a couple of years. So And it's like, oh, my neck's sore. Do you think it's sore now? Wait till a couple of years when you're bent over permanently.
100%.
Like when these guys get to be old, they're
Yeah.
going to be all messed up. But it's like everything else. Like when things come out and they're new, and people haven't quite figured them out yet. If they're going to use them, like we talked about braided line. We talked about Senkos before we went on. I mean, braided line and Senkos are responsible for more fish in my lifetime, not personally, but that people use than any forward-facing sonar is ever going to give up.
So you look at it from the old guard. This is no different. It's a tool. It's no different than braided line. It's no different than Senko. It's no different than any other technology like Spot Lock 360 and all this other stuff.
Oh, Spot Lock to a smallmouth fisherman was the end of the world out in Lake Ontario when it came out.
Yeah.
You don't have Spot Lock? Are you crazy? Oh, I can't afford it. It's because you hooked the fish, you hit Spot Lock, you were staying on the same spot.
Yeah.
All you had to do was walk back up to the front, theoretically.
Yeah.
Throw your jig out in the same place or whatever you were fishing, your drop shot, your crankbait, whatever it might be. I always have to get the word crankbait in there. But whatever you were doing, you have to do it.
Right. What we're trying to look at with Kyle's segment is there's a theme there that it's a tool, and we'll, as we go further into some of the other arguments, you'll see where our thought process is in this discussion. Jay, Kyle said some great things there. Talked about perhaps smallmouth fishing, those tournaments, they're a little boring. That perhaps maybe bass and some of the other FLW, they have to up their game to improve the watchability for us spectators. Do you agree?
So here's what I think's missing with forward-facing sonar. And I was thinking about this today while I was fishing, because for those of you that don't realize this, when I'm out kayak fishing, I usually have my phone in my pocket, and I'll play podcasts while I'm fishing. I'll just like listen to the radio, and forward-facing sonar is a hot topic, and it's the topic on most podcasts right now. And one that made me think today was this, guys, and we saw this at the Classic this year with Gussie. So one of the coolest things about the Classic this year with Gussie was we were watching his forward-facing hummingbird unit. Basically he was casting to the bass, and we were watching those smallmouth, those Tennessee River smallmouth, come up and take his bait, right? And that was cool footage. I think what has to happen is, and Jim, you hit it on exactly. Like, I want to watch, I love watching KVD work a jerkbait. I love Denny Brower working a jig. I want Dean Rojas working a frog. Like, let's go through all those top names and those baits they're associated with. Reality is that we need the technology now for these live tournaments, because we're going down that road where we could watch the forward-facing sonar. There's a skill to this. For someone who can look at a screen, and it's a very narrow beam. It takes a real skill to maneuver that beam. And then when you get locked onto a fish, and a lot of times that fish, it's not like it's there and you just throw something to it and it just swims up and eats it. You have to tease that fish into doing it. Patrick Walters did this at Lake Fork 2 years ago when he won, where he was using jerk baits and he was chasing big largemouth over open water, and he would find a target and he would have to stay on that target, and it wasn't always in his beam. He'd have to move his trolling motor or his unit to find it. That's a skill that we're not seeing. The ability to, think of it as golf. It's the putting game, right? It's those short casts accurately to get that done. And I'm sure that the rod, the reel, the line has to be really, put together well as a combo just to make those subtle casts one after the other. And so I think that we need to see going forward, we need to see basically how can we watch that? And, in a lot of these units, you can just hook an HDMI cable to a camera, and we should be able to watch that now. And Scotty, I think that's where it's going to go going forward, because I'm sure that Bass and other, MLF and others are aware that this is boring to watch. But how can we make it more enticing, because this technology is not going anywhere? That's my thought on how to make it better for us, more interesting for us, because you're right, Jim. I'm just watching the back of someone's head, for hours on end. We got to fix that, and I think that's the way.
I never thought about what you said about watching when they kept showing Gussie's screen in the Classic.
Yeah,
and you get all excited.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I was pumped. Like you saw, and you hear when Cooper.
I'm getting excited now. I'm thinking of
right. Like when Cooper won that event, and he described that event on Cherokee, and he described how the smallmouth were down in the rocks, and they would use the Demiki rig over top of the moping, Demiki, same thing, over top of the rocks to entice those bass out of the rocks. Those bass were not showing up on the 2D sonar. Now, when Gussie was in Tennessee the first time and he won that elite tournament, we know he was able to see those fish on 2D. Why I remember these facts, I have no idea. I don't even know what I'm supposed to do tomorrow morning, but I can tell you that Gussie caught them on 2D sonar because I remember these things. But then he went back with forward facing, and it made it, come to live, basically, where it's like you had these rocks where the bass were in the rocks. You could not see them on sonar. But on live sonar, the Demiki rig would tease them up, and you just watch those fish, and you have to make fish compete. This gets back to ice fishing, Jim. We talk about this all the time. I'm teasing that crappie up on the flasher, and if I have one red line, I don't got much action. But if I got 2 red lines coming up or 3 those fish are now getting competitive, and I can actually get those fish to bite when there's more than one fish there. And we saw Gussie do that in Knoxville. And I'm sure that's what's happening a lot. And now if it's an individual fish, now you're hunting it. And that takes a certain skill set too. All of this comes down to, what do we want to watch? I want to watch that on television, when I'm watching these events. They have to bring that forward to make this more palatable as a viewer, to me.
I 100% agree with you, Jay. And to me, I'm so glad you brought up the flasher argument, because before we went live, Jim talked about it and touched on it. And really, at the end of the day, to me, forward-facing sonar is no different than a flasher that points down as opposed to up. It's the same thing, in my opinion.
no different.
Yeah, it's the exact same thing.
People used to say to me, "Oh, I'm not buying one of those Vexilars. I can't figure out how to use it." Try using a forward-facing sonar for the first time. You best bring somebody with you that knows how to do it, or have the book with you, and be good at reading.
So some good discussion topics that have come up. Obviously, Steve Shaw, the main advantage of forward-facing sonar is the ability to provide anglers with increased accuracy and efficiency when detecting fish. This technology allows for more detailed view of the underwater environment, making it easier to locate fish and identify structure. Now, that's for someone that can afford it. But as Richard Dunlop brings up, what about young anglers? What about kayak anglers that are going about angling in a way that is efficient and effective and cost effective for them? Are we segregating a whole population of anglers with this forward-facing sonar?
Scotty, I put a link in the chat, and I came across this. Literally just Googled this up, and it's an editorial by a writer from Minnesota, and I like this. I liked what he talked about, and what I'm going to give the gist of it. What hit home with me was, and we talked about this backstage before the show, this is expensive technology right now. Like the cheapest side imaging unit you can get right now, we're talking side imaging, which 25 years ago, this was the forward-facing sonar of that time. It was game-changing, and it changed the game of fishing, and still plays a factor. With side imaging now, you can buy a unit, regular price around $1,500, and on sale you can get them for under $1,000, at the right time of year. So but this editorial piece talks about a few things about forward-facing sonar, but what hit home with me was, once that price drops, and it will come down, once that price comes down where it's affordable, now we might have issues. And where the issues come from is it's not the majority of anglers, but it is a tool. And if someone gets good at it, they could harvest more fish. And the concern with the editorial piece was, will fisheries managers kind of be keeping their, ear to the road on this, where they're like, okay, do we have to manage fisheries differently? Do we have to look at limits, reducing limits? Hell, we talk about this on the show all the time, guys, about Gord Pizer brought it up lots of times, the greed factor, right? We're too greedy. you know. And so to reduce limits, if you're going to blame forward facing sonar, fine. I say we drop a lot of limits out there anyways, because I don't need 100 perch in my freezer. I don't, but that's the limit. And now, will this happen in the near future? No. We're years away. We're years away from this becoming a problem, if it becomes a problem. But this is one of the concerns out there. Am I concerned about it? A little bit, but we're still a long ways away from it becoming an issue, if it even becomes an issue. And that's probably the only issue that I have is how will it be used by anglers who, you know, who just want to fill their coolers every weekend? How will that happen?
Great point. And my good buddy Brett from the Sport Journal Radio touches on this. He sort of goes in a different way at the beginning, but rounds it up at the end, and truly at the end of the day sends home a great message to all anglers like us, Jay, that are worried about how this is going to affect our fisheries.
It's pathetic watching people just stare at their screens all day. Well, you know what? It's fun. It's fun because you're learning what's going on under the water. Whether you catch fish or not, to me, it's fascinating to learn more about fish habits. And, you know, when you're just staring at a surface and blind casting all the time, sure, it's fun to try to break a lake down and figure it out. But that's exactly what you're doing with this technology. It's just an advancement in technology that gives you a better view of what's going on under the surface and better opportunity to learn fish behavior. It's up to you as an angler to determine how much pressure you're putting on those fish and causing fish mortality. So it just comes back to don't blame the tool, blame the person using the tool if there is a problem, right? You could look at a number of different industries and see similarities. And you're not going to blame the tool in certain situations. You're going to blame the person using the tool. And to me, this is exactly the same.
You agree, Jim?
Yeah.
Yep. At the end of the day, it's on us. It's truly on us.
Yeah.
And I've always said that. You've heard me say, like ice fishing, for some reason, I don't know what it is. People got to have a pile of fish. They cook up a plate of fish that's 3 feet high for 2 people. We don't eat anything else like that. We go out, we catch a bunch of fish, and we eat fish until we puke. And it's just, I have no idea why. You don't see somebody come home on a Friday night and cook up 15 pork chops and eat them. Well, maybe somebody does.
Yeah.
But,
It's true. Yeah.
but you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's just one of those things, you know, like there's two things out there: crappy fillets and chicken wings. And we got lots of chicken wings, so we don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
You know, if you want to pile them up, go ahead and do it. But, you know, we don't have a lot of fish. They disappear pretty quick and they take a long time to grow back.
So on this topic of limits, and of course, Jay, you and I have talked about this at great length when it comes to the ethics of fishing. And, you know, unfortunately, our good buddy Steve was out, and I won't say where, but he was out at a river watching some anglers wet a line or 2 or 3, and was annoyed to see the lack of ethical fishing that was going on. So at the end of the day, we have to do, and I say, like all of us have to do a better job when it comes to educating people. But yes, this is almost, you know, it's like the arms race. You know, we shot bullets, we shot, you know, light artillery, heavy artillery, and then all of a sudden the nuclear age became an issue. And it's to me, it's a different topic, but has the same scope of an argument in the sense that there is no limit to technology because technology is always evolving as we do. It's how we use it to our advantage, to our benefit, or
look at guns for hunting.
Exactly.
When I was a kid, guys used to go out and shoot and come home and say, you know, oh, I took 5 shots and missed. Well, let me tell you, I don't know too many guys now that go out and have to take a second shot because of the scopes, the accuracy, the guns, the bullets that they use, everything else. You know, I mean, it's just one of those things. I got lots of buddies that are absolute freak hunters. Like they got more money tied up in hunting stuff than they do in fishing stuff.
Right.
Way more. And that's hard to do.
So to your point, Jim, and to your argument, you're only allowed basically 1 scope on a gun, right? And it's just fundamentally, you can't have more than 1 scope on a gun. This gentleman, Andrew Upshaw, talks about limits when it comes to the amount of monitors you're allowed, the amount of actual electronics you're allowed on your boat. So have a listen to Andrew's take.
Personal opinion is you don't need more than 4 graphs on your boat, truly. Let's just say, for instance, you have 4 graphs. You have 2 on the back, 2 on the front. That is the limit. That is the rule that should be in place. Okay, so let's say we have this particular rule, and the guy says, you know what? I want to put a 360 on the front, and I want to put a live scope, or I want to put an active target. If he does that, his 2 units are taken because he's going to have his 360 in one unit, he's going to have his forward-facing sonar on the other unit. He's not going to have another one for mapping and regular sonar or anything like that. He's going to have these 2 units. So you kind of get to pick and choose what you're going to do. Do I put an active target and a map and 2D sonar? You know, you kind of get to play with that. But there needs to be a limit on how many units we put on a boat.
All right. Jay, I'll have you start.
I don't know about putting limits. I don't like this, putting limits on electronics, but I do. Part of me does like to see, how can we make bass fishing more about the angler, not about the tools. But without the tools, you don't have the angler sometimes. Like, I think that back in the day, bass fishing competitively and was more on instinct and knowledge. And now it's more about electronics. But I say that it's like, but the exact other side of that is we're learning so much more about these fish with forward-facing sonar, So, I don't know if we should limit it. Like, I listened to that exact podcast and I don't disagree. I don't disagree with it, but I don't really think it's necessary either. I think sometimes some of the anglers that are out there right now, they're so concerned about their own performance, about themselves, that they're not really looking at the big picture here. And I'm not a professional angler. I can't compete against any of these guys, to be honest. Like, these guys, it's their living. But I do think that to reduce it, is making it 4 screens instead of 5 going to make why? It doesn't make any difference to me at all. Like, or are you going to put a limit on the size? Like, the one guy on Lake St. Clair was running like a 22-inch. He had one monitor on his at the helm, and it was like a 22-inch television, right? One screen. So, and even Upshaw's case too doesn't really make sense because all these units you can just run split screens. Like, I don't know. I don't think we should limit electronics. Let them have as many screens as they want.
So, it's funny because when we look at a picture like this, I think back to, what was going on back in the day when Big Jim was in his heyday. And I'm thinking, do you go to him and say, oh, listen, Jim, you can only have 4 graphs on your boat. You're only allowed 2 trolling motors. You're only allowed 8, sticks, this, that, and everything else. It obviously was a lot simpler to just go out and catch fish back in the day than it is now, because I think the message is being confused that you're saying I need to have this forward-facing sonar in order to catch fish, or can I still do it, the old school way like Big Jim did back in the day? It's a tough argument, and
yeah, I just think that we shouldn't be limiting this stuff. There's no, and especially if you're changing the rules, like I don't like limiting it at all. Let them do what they want, because it's not about the tools, it's about the angler in the end. You still got to catch the darn things.
Amen.
Right? So,
Jim?
It's 100% true. Like I was sitting here snickering to myself when you're saying about the number of screens. And I say, God, when I fished and you had a graph, you were limited by the number of pixels you had. It was about 12. It was about 12 on the screen because they were half an inch across when they started. But
the number of paper rolls you had, Jim.
Yeah,
the number. What was the spool of paper you had on that graph, Jim? Like the paper rolls, man. Like,
everyone used to have paper, but we've talked about it so many times. I mean, if you looked across the graph, the biggest one they had, the Humminbird 8 deep. This is what the pixels looked like. People don't remember.
Yep.
Now those things swim around and have fins and have bubbles come out of them.
Yeah.
I mean, it's no different than when it went through a pile of pixels.
You can see what a fish parts now. Like, it's crazy, man.
I know guys used to say to me, "Oh, you should. That's for ice fishing, isn't it?" Well, apparently not, because I just got a check for $85,000 and you didn't.
Yeah.
like stuff like that. Like it's just like I don't know. And another thing, I noticed I've seen so much of this on social media in the last like 10 days or so, a week, I guess. I don't see too many of the guys that are winning and got lots of money on saying anything about it.
Yeah.
Kevin Van Dam made a real gracious statement.
Yeah.
It was
Spot on.
KVD.
It's coming on.
Do you have it? Yeah.
I have it
You know?
because he is so on point in regards to that. And I would say maybe explains to some of us who aren't that knowledgeable when it comes to bass tournaments why some of the wins are so sporadic, why there isn't a KVD element that just continues to go out and produce trophies, produce hardware. I think KVD, as you said, Jim, very eloquently talks about that. But one thing too, Jim, you and I have talked about this when it comes to colors and the fluff and certain presentations that are used with the forward-facing sonar. There's really only three that I can think of: the Nico drop shot and the fluff. Some will say jerk baits are a huge part of forward-facing sonar as well. But is it limiting, Jim? Because Randy seems to think that this might have a lot to do with the decrease in sales of tackle, this forward-facing sonar. Have a listen to this.
That really inspired me to want to do this video. I got a message from one of my subscribers last week that said he was a live scoper, forward-facing sonar unit, and he said, Randy, I am a live scoper. I use forward-facing sonar, and ever since I've started doing this, he goes, I don't use 90% of the tackle that I own, and that got me thinking. And I started doing a little research about how tackle sales across the board in the country in the United States are down this year. And it didn't really make any sense because our economy is pretty strong. We got historically low unemployment. The GDP grew by over 2% in the first half of 2023. Consumer spending is up. I mean, people are spending money, but they're not buying fishing tackle like they have the last couple of years before that. And I got thinking about what this subscriber said, and it makes perfect sense, guys.
Do you think that there is a correlation, Jim?
No, I think what you're seeing right now is you're seeing a correction, is the word to use, from the COVID years.
Yeah.
That's what you're seeing. You're seeing people bought fishing tackle during COVID like there was no tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like there was no tomorrow. Like it was offside. You don't see back orders coming from companies now. They have stuff again. Now that was also, there was also other things that play there. Obviously, they couldn't make a lot of it. It couldn't get shipped. It wasn't moving the same way and everything else. Yeah. But that's only true for the smallmouth fishermen, because all the guys fishing for largemouth, basically, although some of them are doing it, the rest of the guys are still out there flogging frogs and throwing jigs and all the other stuff out there. I think it's just the smallmouth fishermen that have changed how they operate. And they used to be out there buying boxes of $30 jerk baits or $75 jerk baits for that matter, spending a lot of money that way. But no, the fishing industry had a pretty good run through COVID. From what they could sell, they did sell, and or what they had to sell, they sold. And I think you might see a bit of a correction on that, and give it another year or so here, and I think it'll come around. But no, it's definitely true. But then again, I know guys that go out now. They got like 300 bags of drop shot baits in the boat.
Yeah.
Just like they used to have 300 bags of craws and worms. Like they're guys that used to fish largemouths and they fish smallmouths now. So that applies up here and in certain places in the States. But you go to Florida, that's monster. I memean, they're still just buying jigs and frogs and plastic worms and all that stuff out there, right? So it's
well, some would argue, Jim, that the 7'6" rod was designed for forward-facing sonar for the simple fact that kind of rod, you can set the hook properly, you can cast very light baits a lot further. So there has been a technological advancement, in my opinion, to some of the tackle that we're producing that, maybe people would have liked the 6-foot rod back in the day. Well, now with the forward-facing sonar, it seems as if you have to go with the 7.6 in order to be effective with it.
I actually heard it from a few people this year that contacted me about getting fluff and wanted to, when they picked it up or whatever, they wanted, if I could show them the rod they should be using. what they had heard about. They wanted to see the rod. And some of these guys thought, then again, came back with they thought it wasn't fair that the tournament guys were sponsored and got all this stuff for free. And I said, well, there's a few of them in the States and very, very few in Canada that are getting all this stuff for free.
Yeah.
And I said, you got to understand that. But it was like anything else. You couldn't go muskie fishing and throw a 6-ounce lure or an 8-ounce lure until you bought your 9-foot double heavy rod.
Yeah.
You couldn't do that. So you bought that. So what difference does it make? Because it's for smallmouth and it's for drop shot and sonar, forward facing sonar. So many of these things apply right there. And like, I was just thinking here when you were showing that, it came into my mind again. And I mentioned to you before we started here, how many salmon were caught in Lake Ontario today?
Yep.
Well, there was no forward-facing sonar there. So if you're saying it's going to hurt the fishery, if these guys and the ability that they have to catch these fish aren't hurting the fish.
Yeah, and really at the end of the day, as Jay and I talk about all the time, and you as well, Jim, it's all about being ethical. It's about following the rules. And as long as you're following the rules and you're fishing these fish properly, then we shouldn't have the kind of troubles that we talk about, that are argued about, that people criticize each other about.
And you even have to go ahead of the rules. Like Jay mentioned earlier, nobody needs 100 perch.
Yeah.
Nobody. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you got 10 kids at home. You don't need 100 perch.
Yeah.
Even if you're going to feed them all once. It's just not what it is. There just isn't that much out there, and it's governing yourself. Like you heard me tell the story about having the crappies in the bucket down the back here, and I looked at them and oh geez, I put them back in because I know so many people come here just to take them home, and they take everything they can catch. Yeah. It doesn't make a difference if it's undersized, oversized, under the limit. Over the limit, they don't care. It goes in the bucket.
Yeah.
Jay, you've heard me talk about the local guys here.
100%.
Man, oh man, they're a terror.
No, you're right, Jim. Jay, when it comes from a Berkeley perspective, or maybe some of the people you follow you, have you seen a trend towards adapting to this technology, that perhaps we are now producing stuff that is designed to be used?
So there are companies. It's a good point, Sky. There are companies now who are designing baits that are tailored to forward-facing sonar. That basically, we've all realized this too, just with regular sonar. Like, if I'm going to video game fish with regular sonar, I'm going to probably use a round drop shot weight versus a cylinder, because the round gives off a better target. So you get a better return signal on your graph, and that's even just with 2D sonar around. And the mad scientists at Humminbird figured this out years ago, and a lot of their developments were building around round objects, and then basically sending their signals down into a tank and recording and figuring out how to take that technology and make it into a sonar unit.
Interesting.
I think what Randy, and I don't want to say out to lunch, but that's the only term I can describe here. And I don't know the whole video, so maybe I shouldn't say that. But what drives the market? What drives the fishing market? It's not this high-end stuff. You're talking a lot of the rods and reels out there and the baits. It's not necessarily discount stuff, but you're talking, $100 rod, $50 rod, in that range. The $50 to $100 reel. That's the majority of the sales. Like, we kind of live in a bit of a fantasy world a little bit, because all of us, in the fishing industry, we have the privilege of using wonderful tackle, great tackle, and we get to test it. And when you hear someone say everyone's using forward-facing sonar, sure, a lot of my friends are using forward-facing sonar because I have friends that are in the fishing industry that promote forward-facing sonar. But the average angler is not spending all that kind of money on fishing stuff. We hope they do, but they won't. And that's okay. So I think if Randy's talking about fishing sales are down, Jim's right. It's a correction because of COVID. I hate to say this, but after COVID's passed, we're back to worrying about who's going fishing next, because license sales are the long-term trend is still going down.
Yep.
The long-term trend in sales is still dropping because people are not picking up fishing rods. And so is the trend being driven by forward-facing sonar? Oh my God, no, it is not.
No.
There's not enough units being sold out there to impact tackle sales. And I hope Randy doesn't truly believe that. I hope so.
I hope not either, because at the end of the day, Jim, most of your career has been and your legacy has been about teaching people how easy it is to catch fish. And I hate to be one of those people that you've spoken to over the years and have them come up to you now and call, BS that, I need that forward facing sonar. The pros said they need it on the tournament trail. So obviously I need it too. Has our message when it comes to the accessibility of fishing been changed from forward facing sonar at all?
I don't think so. I really don't believe that. It's still going to be, I got sitting here some stuff I got for a giveaway thing I did, and it's $100. It's a $80 rod and reel.
Wow.
That kind of stuff. That's what drives it. And another thing, and I hate that heckle on Randy because I know him and I really like him, but
Yes.
he's a good guy. But so during COVID, there wasn't a lot of tournaments. A lot of it was cut back. So the tournament guys weren't buying stuff. It was the average guy buying stuff.
Yeah.
So now he's gone back to work. Like you said, he's gone back to worrying about feeding his kids and cutting the grass and doing whatever he has to do. And tournament fishing is coming back. So I wouldn't doubt that you see tournament fishing maybe ramp up a little bit now once it gets going again. And that's not tournament fishing in Canada. You can't judge it from Canada. It has to be from the U.S. because you need the monster numbers to really get a true picture.
100%. So I've saved the last, the best for last. The one and only KVD was asked in Ask University TV Talk Radio podcast, his take on LiveScope, and I will say, very intrigued to see this entire podcast, and I highly recommend you going over and listening to it because KVD's take is very similar to what Jim has been saying, what Jay has been saying about when it comes to the overall presence on TV. We are going to lose a little bit of the excitement because of the forward-facing sonar. And yes, he, like the two of you have said, he would have much rather seen, Randy Clunn on some fallen timber or so-and-so throwing a frog. He mentioned that in the podcast, which was so intriguing. But he did talk about its existence in fishing. So I'll have you folks have a listen.
Mega Live for the first time, it basically totally changed everything that I thought and believed that I'd learned in 30 years of competitive fishing about how bass relate to structure and cover and that they don't just randomly swim around in the open, because they do a lot more than I ever dreamed or imagined. And you just didn't know that. And it hasn't changed the way that I fish. I know some guys, that's all they do. I mean, they go and they don't even cast until they see one. I mean, there's some guys that do that, and there's times when that can be very good based on the seasonal pattern. You can do that, but there's a whole lot of other times where it doesn't. It'll kill you as well, and that's why you see some of those people that just totally rely on that be pretty sporadic in their finishes. What I've learned is to use it in my same power fishing style. And, I'll see a fish randomly when I'm cranking a spot or whatever that I know to pitch a drop shot to, or I'll see one follow my crankbait that I would have never known was there. And it tells me that, hey, maybe I need to change colors or change my presentation, stop or start it, do something a little bit different. Fishing a jerkbait, same way. I mean, you just don't realize how many just watch your bait that don't bite. So it gives you that real-time feedback to know to make an adjustment based on the conditions. So to me, it is a powerful tool, but I don't see that it's something that I think should be banned by any means.
And there you go. And I would have to agree 100%.
How?
Yep. And I think too, something that is sort of touched on with what he says there, does it make a good fisherman better? Or is there an argument to suggest that it makes an okay fisherman so good that he doesn't have the instincts of a Big Jim or a Jason or a KVD. When you are throwing in a crankbait and you're reeling it back, you do get a follow. Do you lose that instinct, to throw a plastic or throw something to entice because you're so in tuned to the screen?
Yeah, I over time you could evolve like that. Let's say I would believe you could do it, but this thing still isn't the end all because 2 weeks ago in the St. Lawrence here, you had the elite guys here. Did you see the weights some of them brought in?
Yeah.
The best are. It's not even debatable that this is the best smallmouth bass fishery in the world. Maybe not as much on the numbers, but on the size. There's no offense, ors, or buts. But you saw some of the best fishing guys, some of the best guys that have won here before. Came in with like 10 pounds, 8 pounds, 5 pounds, 7. You can catch more than that sitting on the dock in Gananoque in the morning.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I'm not saying that to be smart toward them. It's what it is. And that's what happens when you start to depend on something like he said.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's what happened out in the river here.
Yeah.
And
to his point, you do see a lot of these champions, a lot of these, up and comers, rookies, whatever. They are sporadic in where they end up in various tournaments, and that could be a variety of reasons. But forward-facing sonar, there is an argument there that if you've become too in tune to your electronics, that you lose some of the intangibles, and I think there's an argument there. So I don't know. Does it make a good angler better? Yeah, I could see it, but I don't know if you're going to make a great angler better, because even some of the pros that, if you listen to those podcasts, they will even say that when it comes to skipping docks, they don't do it as much because they're so focused on learning this forward-facing sonar that they've not abandoned, but they have gotten away from the traditional presentations of fishing. And
hey, David Dudley he's second in line to KVD all-time money, and he said to me when we were at Andy's show a couple of years ago, he said to me, we're sitting talking to him, and he says, I use the forward-facing sonar on docks.
Yeah.
So I know if I should be wasting my time fishing for 10 minutes.
Yeah. 100%.
So there's another application nobody
So,
uses.
Yeah. 100%.
Let me throw this out there.
Yep.
So I was listening to Mercer's podcast today, and Dave did an interview with Patrick Walters. Patrick won the recent event on the St. Lawrence. Only elite angler in history so far to do Century Club for both largemouth and smallmouth. Okay. Patrick is known for his skills at electronics. During the interview, and I'm pretty sure it was that podcast I listened to today, Dave asked Patrick a question, and the question basically was, I heard a rumor about the Champlain tournament, which was 2 weeks ago, not 1 week ago, the week prior to the St. Lawrence. And this was the rumor, and Patrick said this was true. So on Champlain, Champlain is a great fishery, and it's a mixed bag fishery. It is typically, you can go there and fish a jig for largemouth, top water for smallmouth. You can junk fish, and get a decent limit of, 17, 18, 19 pounds to be in that sort of top 25, top 10. And we're talking every day for 4 days. That event, what the better anglers did in that event was, this is Patrick Walters telling me this. I didn't watch the footage. What Patrick said was, a lot of the bigger bags that you saw in that event, and this is probably the top half of the field, they caught fish suspended over open water. He said August is a tough time of the year to fish. I agree. Late August into early September can be a real, that is the dog days of summer. Fish are in there. Everything's in a funk right now, right? You could have a good day of fishing still. Doesn't mean you shouldn't go, but you got to work your tail off right now to have a good day of fishing, truthfully. And Patrick said that these anglers who had good days, they were out live scoping over open water, chasing down smallmouth that were a few feet down over 40, 70 feet of water. And, so what does that tell us? Is that wrong? Because it would have been a bunch of 16 and 15, 16-pound bags. Instead, there was a group of anglers, a large group, using forward-facing sonar that went against the grain, that did something that, we've talked about, you've read about chasing suspended fish. Who won the event out of Buffalo years ago, Jim, the Japanese angler, and he caught them suspended for smallmouth, like in Erie, like 50, 60 feet. They were like 25 or 30 feet down over 50 feet of water.
Yeah,
and
I
he used
forget
a
who.
drop shot, right? Like we hear about that from time to time, and that's usually one or two anglers that kind of can dial in that pattern on a certain body of water, but not a group of anglers doing it on the same body of water. But they couldn't have done that without forward-facing sonar. And so I think that, we wonder about, and again, I'm not going against, I love watching the players play, right? Like again, KVD with a jerkbait, Denny Brower with a jig. I want to see those things. But at the same time, now I want to see someone, how are they working these suspended fish? And we have technology now that can show us how to do that. There is a skill to that. That's something that I think that's one of the arguments. You're right, Scotty, right now where, is the electronics making the angler? Like it's a tool that they've been given, and not every angler has accepted the tool. Like even this year, Brendan Cobb, who finished second in AOI to, you just had him on there. Oh my gosh. Kyle Welcher. Cobb and Welcher were neck and neck angler of the year after day one of the St. Lawrence. Cobb didn't put a forward-facing sonar on his unit until Lay Lake, which was like the third event this year. Like Cobb is a shallow water largemouth fisherman. He's not going to use forward-facing sonar much at all. He's still that, fundamental shallow water angler, and that's how he's cut his teeth. Welcher is though too. Welcher, if you look at how Welcher's finishes are, where he's done well, it's not in the north. But Welcher has embraced forward-facing sonar on these deeper northern fisheries, and that's why he's done well this year. That's just one angler, and even Patrick Walters said today in that podcast that he typically never did well up north, and he made a joke, and you guys will like this. He said that G-Man backstage said at one of the events up north said, basically, you're on the St. Lawrence, you're only fishing for 8th. And Patrick's like, why 8th? Because G-Man said, because Johnsons are taking 2 spots, so you only get 8 spots to pick from. I thought that was pretty clever of G-Man to say that.
That's almost true.
It's almost true, right? So Walters wanted to try and beat the Johnsons. Like he's like, those are the guys that I want to emulate. I want to beat those guys. Like I love them, but I want to beat them. And how do you beat them? You got to use the best technology. And he said, I got to put food on my table. I got to feed my family. This is what I need to do that. So he's all in. But as bass anglers, we're catch and release, right? So if we're putting those fish back, as long as we're not taking them for, regular joyrides for cover photos, which I don't agree with all the time for sure. I think, forward-facing sonar is going to affect different groups of anglers differently. But I think where it comes down to the issue, Scotty, and I think that's something that we have to wait and see, is will the meat eaters out there embrace forward-facing sonar, and will we see changes in our fishery because of it? I don't know. That's the unknown that I think a lot of us are going to have a concern with.
Couldn't agree more, Jay. One thing, too, that has not been talked about tonight and wasn't brought up, but when it comes to forward-facing sonar, it makes an awful lot of racket. Anybody that's ever used it ice fishing, it's a very loud sonar, high frequency, lots of power goes to these units. At some point, and Jim, I know this is not a question for you to ask, but do the fish get in tune with this loud noise that when this thing's hovering over top of them, they know not to, come out of their cover, perhaps chase a bait? Are we concerned that perhaps we're feeding the fish too much information?
Well, they don't know not to come out of the cover. That would mean that they would know somebody had a forward-facing sonar.
There you go.
Trust me, they don't. They don't know that. But I know a lot of guys, when Rocky and I were fishing and we used to use a flasher, you ever put a flasher to your ear and listen to it? Boy, that clacking is pretty loud. We get on a bunch of fish in a milfoil bed. First thing I do is reach down, turn off the sonar. He'd run to the one on the console, and we'd turn them off, and we'd fish because we didn't need it anymore. We knew the fish were there. And I was sitting here and I was thinking about this, about talking about looking for fish. And I remember one day going into Boatland on the 115 when Shimano had the blue and white boats. They had the team boats, the beautiful Pro Crafts. They were awesome boats, really, really nice. And I go in there, and I'm sorry, I forget the guy's name now that worked there. He's passed since. He was a great guy. The guy could fix anything. And I forget what was wrong with the boat. It was something real trivial. It was something got blocked and the live wells wouldn't work and whatever. And I said to him, "Hey, do me a favor." He said, "What's that?" I said, "Can you check the cables, because on the graph it wants to go on and off when I'm running. Like you'll hit a wake and you look down, the graph's off. So it's probably like a bad connection, a wire or whatever else." So he just pulls the cable out, gets the stringer thing, he puts it through, feeds it, puts a new cable on, and it's everything good. And then he says to me, "Here, look, let me have a peek at the big motor, because it's due in next week for its first check on the warranty thing." So he hooks it up and he looks at me, and I'm sitting there, and I'm hanging out the truck and I'm just chatting with him or whatever, right? And he says to me, "You sneaky bugger." And I go, "What?" And he says to me, and this was the first time I saw that the way they could measure the time of the RPMs, how much it ran at 2,500 or 27 or 3,000 or 5,000 or whatever, And he looked at it and he said to me, "I've never seen this before." I said, "What?" He said, like 80% of the time on your motor has been under 2,200 RPMs or 2,000 RPMs or something, which is just barely above
idle
where it idles.
Yeah.
And he said to me, "You spend all day looking, don't you?" I said, "Yeah, I turn on the electronics and I look."
Mm-hmm.
So what's the difference?
Yeah. Amen.
You were using your electronics right to nobody cared that I used it to look, and God knows. Yeah. I found weed and I found piles of rocks. I found stuff that for years we won thousands of dollars off, and it was because of the time that we spent looking. I'd go in a bay that was 600 yards across, and I'd be in there for 4 hours. Because we didn't have, you didn't have all these charts and GPS. You don't want to go to that rock. Well, you had to find it. You didn't just follow the little line to it, And it probably wasn't on the map in the first place.
Right.
And this was the stuff we used to find, It was just one of those things. But when he said that to me, and that's because you used your electronics to the highest level that you could. And I was doing that. I'd have the flasher on. I'd have the graph go. If it had power to it, I had it on looking.
Mm-hmm. No, 100%. Jay, Sparkus puts up in the comment, I'll have you answer it because I'm not sure I am intelligent enough to do so. I've had more fish under the boat this year than last year for sure. What about a hydro wave? Smallmouth are very inquisitive, which I agree. And of course, when it comes to rattle baits, I think someone mentioned about, fish calls back there.
Yeah. Van Dam loves it.
Yeah. At the end of the day, I mean, rattle baits are like a fish call as far as I'm concerned, but I'm not sure. A hydro wave, do you think that would be a better way of detecting fish or finding fish or structure or any of that for that matter?
Well, so hydro waves are pretty cool because what they do is they're basically a speaker that you put underwater that emits sound. And the developers of Hydrowave have recorded the sounds of feeding prey fish. So, for example, I know the KVD model used to be able to buy different SD cards that was feeding shad, feeding perch, feeding brim, feeding red ears, all these different feedings. And then that sound could be amplified out and then underwater. And everyone knows that sound travels way better underwater than in the air. And that the idea that it would actually bring fish to the boat or trigger fish into feeding. So, I think the hydro waves are designed to encourage fish, but I've read it and I've talked to a couple of folks who are using live scope or forward-facing sonar that those high frequencies it's irritating, and I'm going to relate it to like a dog whistle if you're a dog. Okay. And I think that fish, and Jim, you kind of touched on it there. Like when you're stalking fish, especially in shallow water, I always turn my graph off. Like in the kayak, what I do, like, so we largemouth fish all day today. Once I get to my location and I'm ready to start and I'm frog fishing. Like I'm not even pedaling my kayak. Like I got the pedals up and I'm paddling, and I'm in water, like, I'm that deep, like 1.5 feet, 2 feet of water, Trevor and I, and our transducers are up and switched off. Like they're out of the water. I'm using GPS to find my way into these little cuts and little corners of these cane beds. But like, I don't want them to, one, the sonar doesn't work that well in that shallow anyways, but two, I don't want it pinging while I'm working those areas. Like I'm trying to be as quiet as possible. Like I'm going through there and I'm using the wind to kind of play me. And I get in there and I got to, like, when I've set my paddle down, like I almost like two-hand it, like I put it down because there's a little cut up ahead that I want to pitch my jig into or cast my frog into. And because I'm watching my spot and I'm not looking at my paddle and I bang my paddle, the next thing is I'm dropping profanity out of my mouth because I'm like, damn it. Like if anyone's done this in a boat too, you got to be quiet in that shallow water. Like talking, I always tell people, you can sing songs, doesn't matter, but you knock the pliers into the bottom of a boat.
Yeah.
That's going to make a negative sound. And hydro waves are meant to make positive sounds, but I think that forward-facing sonar, that high frequency, is probably going to make a negative sound, or at least fish they're not sure what that is. And if fish are in a bit of a bad mood already, like let's say a neutral mood or worse, they may not come to you. And I've seen it with forward-facing sonar where the fish are just moving away from you. They want nothing to do with you. They know you're there. Even though you've put a bait over their head, they're going the other way. So it is cool to understand fish behavior, but I think that there could be a negative here with that sound, Scotty, and that high frequency.
Great point. And Sparkus, thanks for bringing that topic up. So I guess it brings us to the conclusion of this conversation, this discussion. At the end of the day, based on everything that we have learned, everything that you have heard, do we ban forward-facing sonars when it comes to professional tournament trails? Do we segregate tournaments that perhaps may have an amateur appeal so that forward-facing has its own class? Or do we do what Jay Barnews just shared, where tournaments have outright banned them? And this is interesting from the professional muskie tournament trail, where live-facing imaging is going to be discouraged.
Yeah, it's been banned for 2 years now, Scotty.
2 years, there you go. Didn't even know that.
2 years.
Wow, that's incredible.
So, and I think the reason is their logic is muskies are huge targets, and you can pre-fish with live facing. Like you can look around, you can use it up until basically till the event starts. But once the event starts, you can't use it, and you can't use it to locate fish. You have to, troll your way or cast your way into a check. But looking for muskies versus looking for bass is kind of two different things.
Right.
Like when you're out fishing on, especially a fishery like Erie or St. Clair, even Lake Ontario for that matter, you have all these other species that are similarly shaped to bass, like drum, for example, or even small carp, suckers. Like, you can tell the difference in different species to a trained user of this, but for a lot of people, they can't. And I don't think it's going to be a big deal. But for some species out there, and I've heard similar issues with, I said to you guys before the show, like I've heard similar issues around paddlefish, where paddlefish, even big catfish, big blue cats, big flatheads, guides are just driving around the lake looking for them. Like there's no more guy fishing for blue cats in Santee Cooper, just anchored, parked, lines out. They drive around looking now. They're driving around looking for big catfish to catch. And there are some concerns because you're targeting the big ones only, and those long-lived fish it takes a long time. If something happens to that big fish, it takes a long time. And if we're catching more and more big fish, let's say big muskies, big channel catfish, you are putting a pressure on those big fish that are easy to find, because like let's put it this way. You used a hunting analogy earlier, Scotty. Like you can hunt a deer or you can hunt an elephant. Which one's easier to find?
Well, right now, probably a deer, only because
Probably a deer.
we're here in our own backyard. But an elephant, yeah, I mean, you climb on a plane, take me to the desert, I'm pretty sure I'd be able to spot that.
Yeah, but the little gazelle running around the Serengeti you can't see, but the elephant you can see.
Yeah.
Right. So I get that point.
Yeah, 100%. Oh, 100%. Jim, what's your take? Do we allow them? Do we encourage certain species of fish in the tournament trails that they have from using them? Is there a specific species?
Well, I guess that's up to the guys that run the tournament trails to govern themselves accordingly. Everybody else, carry on, folks.
Yeah, 100%.
That's the way I see it. Like I said to you earlier, when I said to my buddy this week about he got on ranting about them, and I said to him, well, then, and he's a real big green guy, like maybe over the top green. And I said to him, I said, well, look at, if we didn't have gas motors, look how little, how much less pollution there'd be in the water. And he just looked at me and he knew I was digging him, eh? But, I mean, it's what it is. Where do you draw the line? We've talked about this so many times.
100%.
Yeah, why do you have paddles in a canoe?
Yeah.
Or in a kayak? You should have to paddle it. You shouldn't be allowed to pedal it.
Right.
And now they have motors on them. You
Oh,
won't
God,
even have a
true.
paddle in a couple of years. You won't even buy one when you buy a kayak.
Yeah.
It's true. And I will say, I will end this segment with Curtis Smith's comment, which is pretty much what we're all looking for. We're talking about the enjoyment of angling. And that, I think, encapsulates it right there. When it comes to, it was cool. It drew me into fishing. And I'll tell you right now, we are having a real problem when it comes to young anglers becoming anglers, like passionate anglers. And I've always said we have to find a way to bring the electronics to angling in order to get these kids truly in tune. And I want to applaud Forward Facing Sonar, because it has brought an element of something that we see our kids play all the time, which is video games, to the angling community. So
You know how many times I've heard that about Vexilar, Scotty, over the years, ice fishing with kids?
Oh,
Yep.
yeah.
Like thousands. I know guys whose kids got into ice fishing. They don't bass fish in the summertime or anything, but they love ice fishing because it's like a video game. Can we go ice fishing? We use the round thing.
Oh yeah.
And really, if Jay, you could attest too, trying to get a kid into fishing, especially ice fishing, and you would know best of all because you're constantly on the move. Without electronics, it makes for a very hard day of fishing for someone that perhaps is being introduced to it for the first time. Maybe you're trying to introduce your kid to it. What, I'm just going to sit here and freeze my arse off and just jig? Like, it is so much cooler to watch a kid watch a fish chase his bait on a flasher. It's amazing. And to me,
I'll tell you, like, when I first got my first Vexilar FL8 SE, this is probably around before Trevor was born. So it's going to be around 2002, 20 years ago, I got my first flasher. Before then, I was rigging up my old Humminbird Cubert thing with the stick and, all that kind of
Cubert.
stuff. Yeah, Cubert. You guys remember Cubert?
I love that Cubert.
So, but that old FL8, like when I let Trevor use it for the first time, like let's say it took me most of my first season to get that thing dialed in where I truly understood it. I bet you it took Trevor 3 trips at like 8 years old, and he had it dialed in. And I was 25 when I had to dial it in, right? Like that, those, especially a flasher, because there's only so much you can do with it, right? Once they understand the game and the depth and understand the depth settings, let them go. It's honestly it's a great investment, and they're bulletproof. I'm not supported by Vexilar, but I think that those machines are awesome for families and ice fishing. They are probably everyone should just have one that ice fishes to give to someone to use, even if it's not their,
And you look how valuable they are. I've told the story about the one where we went out on Simcoe and mine was dead.
Yeah.
I passed Will Wegman, God bless you, Will. I
Yeah.
passed him and he said, "Where are you going?" And I said, "I'm done. I'm going to a hotel." He goes, "What's wrong?" I said, "My battery's dead, my Vexilar." And he just looked at me. He said, "You're not going to fish?" I said,
No.
What's the point? What's the point?
Yeah.
You know, and hey, forward-facing sonar might go that way sometime too. Like it might be one of those. It could be the Vexilar 10 years from now, guys. Let's be honest. Like we don't know what's coming. You know, will there be a company that brings it down to a price that the average angler can afford? And we're talking, it's got to bring it down to that $1,000 mark, right? And we're not there. We're not there, and won't be there for a while. Will the quality be as good? It'll just be like electronics now, I guess, where you're going to have you can buy the low-end Humminbird or low-end Garmin or low-end Lowrance, and they'll catch fish. They'll help you catch fish. The high-end ones will just do a better job of it, but we're talking a difference of $500 to $1,000 up to $3,000 and $4,000.
Amen.
So if we can get it down, people will become good at it. I'm very confident of it. But I think that's a long way coming. Like I want to say, like some of these we talked about beginning of the show, some of these side imaging units, like they didn't get under $1,000 till recently, really. You know, like I think the Helix in the Humminbird line, I think the Helix 7 is about the cheapest side imaging unit you can buy. The Helix 5 doesn't have it. And you're looking at, Boxing Day sale is going to be $1,000, but that took 25 years to get to that point,
100%.
to get to that price.
Yeah.
I'm sure side imaging when it first came out was not $1,000 or
Nope.
$1,500. It was probably $2,000 or $3,000 back then, which is what, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 now.
Yeah.
Right.
True enough.
Wild, but we'll get there.
Gentlemen, this has been a real treat. I can't thank the pair of you enough for all this. As I said, at the end of the day, this is a hot topic, highly discussed, highly critical, highly criticized. There are so many opinions, so many points of view, and they all make sense, especially to the individuals who are saying it. But I wanted to bring it to our CFN community.
See what's behind me in the picture? In the cover? Jay knows what that is.
Is that a Vexilar I see up in the corner?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought. As always, gents, thanks so much for your time. It is Labor Day weekend, so there's a little bit of time left for all of us to enjoy. Get out there, enjoy that warm weather that is coming tomorrow. And again, to you two, I can't thank you enough for all you do for our community. It means the absolute world.
You guys start collecting boxes. You're all coming to help me move.
Oh boy.
Oh boy. That's good news. Good news. Now listen, I don't want you guys to leave necessarily because we have a quiz coming up, and all those who are watching, you're going to want to listen to this right after this word from our sponsor.
All right.
When it comes to Canadian food, we've got your back with flavors like lemon pepper, beer batter, campfire barbecue, lemon pepper dill, garlic butter and chives, and crispy Cajun. We've got a mix for every meal. Whether you're serving East Coast shrimp, West Coast salmon, succulent walleye, chicken wings, or veggies, we've got you covered. Coat your food in outdoor flavors. Available online or at these fine retailers.
So, again, thanks to Big Jim and Jay for discussing what has been a very hotly discussed topic. And I think we did a fantastic job. We certainly did it differently than a lot of folks, the approach anyway, than a lot of folks have been doing it. And again, I couldn't do it without those two. Lawrence, we're looking forward to seeing you next Monday. I can't wait to go to Timmins and enjoy the NOWT this coming Friday and Saturday. So I'm looking forward to see all our CFNers up there. And there's actually quite a few that made the championship heat that we have done a lot of, edits on. We've promoted on our page. So it's really it's going to be cool to shake their hand and ask them how they're doing. The quiz tonight, I need you folks to tell me what that is. We have a CFN prize pack. We will be giving it away. You need to PM me directly with your answer. This is what it is. That's all I'm going to tell you. You need to tell me exactly what this is used for. That's all. I was about to give you a hint, but I'm not even going to bother. PM me directly. Tell me what it is. We're going to put all the names on a wheel. We have a CFN pack that has North Shore, Outdoor Flavors, Ugly Boys Baits, and a few other knickknacks in there as well. Of course, as I said, if you are interested in spending some time with OFC Nation, Moose, Jeff, myself, Mike, and the gang up at Camp McIntosh, we look forward to seeing you there. And make sure you book your butt in a bed. It's been a great night. Thanks for everyone for sticking around. Enjoy what's left of your Labor Day weekend. Dave Mercer, it's time to take us away. Love you all, folks. Have yourselves a fantastic week. All the best. Peace.
Well, as much as I hate to admit it, I guess we've run out of time. So I've enjoyed it, but I'm going to do something I haven't done since season 1. Turn out the lights. The party's over. They say that all good things must end.